This event is the fourth scene event for our current month's theme of adaptations, where we look at films which take inspiration from other mediums. My name is Summer Gamble, and I am a BFI Film Academy young programmer. Today, I'm hosting a Q&A with Rebecca Shoptaw, an award-winning filmmaker based in New York. Through short films, web series, music videos, and more, Rebecca uses the language of film as a communicative tool for audiences. Being featured in The New Yorker, Le Monde, and ID magazine, Rebecca's work has found a home in many international festivals and seen her win, among many others, the Award of Recognition in the 2017 Best Shorts Film Festival and the Best Short Film in the 2019 NYC Web Fest. In the first half of the interview, we will be discussing Rebecca's web series Middlemarch, which was adapted from the novel by George Eliot, and then we will talk about her latest project, Sonnet 49. I'm so excited to be chatting to Rebecca, so if you have any questions, please do drop them down in the comments below, and I will try to answer as many as I can. So let me add Rebecca now. Hello.
Hello, it's so good to see you again.
And you, how are you doing?
Good, good. Got the light more balanced, so only important.
Great. So I guess the first question would be, what sort of motivates you to create adaptations?
Well, starting off with a really easy question, but I think there are probably several ways to answer it. One of them is that and I've said this many times, but I feel like every film is to some extent an adaptation. Like no one just sits in a dark room and is like, film idea. But so everything comes from like either you're adapting something from your own life, something that happened to someone else, something that you see out in the world or that you hear about or some historical event or whatever. But so I feel like it's always great to sort of, instead of just drawing on your own internal resources, taking what you think about and what you're interested in and applying that to something that someone else has thought about and just sort of seeing what happens at the intersection. And then it's also just fun, any kind of, I'm especially drawn to literature or poetry that's sort of difficult to adapt in that it does a lot psychologically, and I love trying to figure out sort of what the film tool equivalents are to what the prose is doing. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
great.
I could have like 20 different answers to that.
Well, we'll get into some of your adaptations a bit later, but as a foundation, what is the most important thing you aim to sort of capture or translate in your adaptations?
Well, I feel like it's the to be very cheesy, it's like the spirit of the work, at least as it reads to me. I think it's, if you're doing like this is especially true for adaptations like across time or across medium or place or whatever, because if you do a like quote unquote straight adaptation of, like, for instance, a Jane Austen novel where all the people have the same names and they say mostly the same things, even if you didn't understand the novel at all, as long as you sort of copy paste right, it'll be an adaptation of the novel. But if you change enough things about the way that the story is told, then you really have to figure out what makes it work, what it's trying to do, and everything that you like about it, you have to figure out why that's there so that you can find some way to translate that. Otherwise people will just be like, well, that's not the book, you didn't read it. So you don't get sort of the advantage of being able to draw such a direct comparison. You have to figure out something central about it.
Yeah, I guess that leads on to my next question. Is there sort of a particular form of like literature that you feel is easier to adapt or easier to capture the spirit of?
Well, I think I was just sort of thinking through all the different forms that I've adapted. I feel like I've hit the major ones.
Yeah.
But I think for short films, I find poetry the easiest because it's already the length that it has like a short film's worth of thought in it. So it makes for a very complete little whole. I feel like each of them sort of demands a different form in the adaptation based on how much they're doing to me, how much I feel like they're doing, or how long they are really. But so it's more about, I think, the what form I'm trying to use for different mediums rather than or for different written mediums that I'm trying to adapt rather than like I just love plays or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's always fun. I'd love to adapt really anything just to see what it would be like.
Yeah, yeah, and you see that in Middlemarch, where you like take on a novel, but you do it in a web series format, which is really interesting. But in it, you alter a lot of the sort of situations in the novel to suit, you know, modern audiences and online culture. So how do you go about navigating stuff like that?
Well, that was so much fun. I love too that for my, well, I guess it was, I adapted a novel sort of as a short film in high school, but this was my first like real novel to tackle. And I did have to pick like one of the best books ever written that's like 1,000 pages long, just my life very easy there. And also, my favorite book. But what for adapting it, first of all, I like very much there's a whole, for anyone who does not know, there is a whole realm of web series adaptations of classic novels that sort of started with the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and I was working within that general genre and mode and watched a ton of other ones to figure out the ways that people do that kind of modernization. But for Middlemarch specifically, the way that I thought about adapting specific moments in the book was by looking at the conversations around whatever happened rather than at the thing itself. Because a lot of things could actually literally also happen today, but they would mean completely different things into
Yeah.
like, character death or whatever. But so I had to figure out what, kind of like what I was talking about before, I had to figure out what each event in the story was doing, how it affected people, what brought it into existence, and what its role was in the bigger novel, and then figure out what modern thing could be the equivalent to that. And that was just like so much.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I guess in the same sense, like trying to figure out things like that, does that impact what kind of format you'll be presenting your adaptations in? Like Middlemarch was a web series, but then you talk about short films as well. So was there any like sort of persuasion to turn Middlemarch into a feature as opposed to a web series?
Oh no, because I didn't have. I mean, I think the great thing about I had wanted to do some kind of I liked the vlog series idea for a while because it appealed to me immediately, something that I could do for like cheap because it's just a single camera setup and the characters are filming, so they shouldn't have a camera that's that amazing or lighting setups that are that advanced. Whereas when you move into feature territory, it's very hard not to want to do an actual, different camera angles, no longer web series adaptation. I feel like the web series is made like the vlog series where it's sort of fictional YouTube vlogs is made for YouTube. And it was very happy there. But that said, if anyone wanted to give me a huge amount of money to make actual period Middlemarch as a film, like I am free. So
Oh yeah. Well, you've adapted two of Shakespeare's sonnets. You did Sonnet 23 in 2016 and Sonnet 49 this year, the film we're discussing. How do you approach translating Shakespeare for the screen?
it's so much fun. Well, I just, as anyone who knows me in person knows, I to an insane degree into Shakespeare, and probably to a very annoying degree, but no one has told me that yet. But so I think it's interesting because of the as opposed to Middlemarch, where I had to translate a lot of the language to the modern day, which I kept it as close as I possibly could, and you can sort of look at the scenes side by side and see that it's quite similar. But with Shakespeare, I really do feel like every word, especially in something as short as a poem, is incredibly important. So it was a very different, I would almost call it like, rather than adaptation, like a staging, where almost as though you were staging a scene from the play where you have the same words, but then your interpretation of it comes through in your decisions, both in directing the actors and then in like the staging choices, which here are like, cinematography and sound and editing and also, locations and costumes and all of that. But yeah, but so that's sort of the fun of Shakespeare. You get to interpret and then you get to figure out what that looks like,
Yeah.
having to modernize the actual language.
Yeah, I guess like the daunting thing about Shakespeare, people think it's such like a classic that they're kind of afraid to take it. But you did it twice. Were there any differences in the way that you approached Sonnet 49 in comparison to Sonnet 23?
Oh, hugely. And I think that thing also just, I think that thing that you say about, people being afraid of Shakespeare is part of why I like working with him, because and why I like, really good productions of Shakespeare, because when you actually do it so that whatever is true about it comes across, and so that, the way that the language is working comes across, it's just actually really easy to understand in a way that if you're just sort of staring at it on the page, you're like, I don't know what the hell this is. But so that's one thing that adaptation, other people's fantastic ones and my own attempts, I hope, can do. But yes, the difference between the two, very huge different. Partly because I had no intention of ever doing another Shakespeare sonnet. I was like, I did my Shakespeare sonnet, I had a great time. I did a montage, so I sort of tried to express the poetic form in the editing form, in the style of it, visually, and the way that it was put together. And then but then I found out about this New York sonnet project thing, and I was like, well, I'm in New York, I love Shakespeare, they're having people, make films as this like big collaborative art project. And I was like, I'll apply. So I looked at the sonnets that they hadn't had anyone make a film for yet, and I applied to direct Sonnet 49 because it was just the most interesting one to me on the page. But that one, I wanted to do it since I was doing another sonnet, and I don't normally repeat myself like that. I wanted to do it as completely differently as possible. Also because I'm changing a lot stylistically now from 2016 when I made the first one. So this one I really did more like a staging of like as though it's on stage, like a staging of the scene where I really got to direct the actors very minutely in the degrees of their performance. And then I also got to set the scene with this little sort of ambiguous montage that puts you right into the headspace of the actress who delivers the sonnet. But then the actual scene is just a continuous take, and we had so much fun choreographing it and talking through it and blocking it, and figuring out all the little beats and shifts in the poem. So it was so much fun.
No, I'm sure. And just like to go back to Middlemarch as well, like how do you decide whether I want to adapt this language to, be more similar to how we speak today, or I want to keep how it is and kind of maybe risk people not completely understanding it?
Well, yeah, I'm not really, maybe it's bad, but that doesn't bother me at all. But I mean, I like the challenge of trying to make people understand it. But I think if I realized thinking about this that if I could do every adaptation that I do just with the actual words as much as possible, maybe adding a little here, cutting a little here, I would absolutely do that. But like the overlap between books that are in the public domain and therefore free to adapt, and books that are would plausibly have characters speak that way in the kinds of places and with the people that I can actually film with, it's like very separate circles. But also I do love classic novels, so it's it's my own fault. But it is, I really did try with Middlemarch, the series, while changing so much. The whole fun of it was trying to stay as close as possible to the actual book, and that was the fun too of translating the situations, so translating the events so that the conversations before and after the events could be the same. I knew that I'd gotten it right when I could basically make it word for word and just add like, yeah, so, and then just put George Eliot's line. So yeah.
Yeah, you touched on the New York Shakespeare Exchange Sonnet Project. Could you explain a little bit more about what that was like, what the pitching process or application process was like?
Yes, I definitely breezed right through that one. New York Shakespeare Exchange has been doing this thing called the Sonnet Project for, I think, since like 2013. I vaguely knew about it when I made my sonnet because their Sonnet 23 also showed up when you looked for it on YouTube, and I was like, what's that? But it's basically it's this big collaborative art project where they've been assigning different New York film directors, like, well, you apply for a sonnet that you want to direct, and then if they think that you're worthy, then they'll assign you like a location and an actor to read the sonnet, and then like some sort of New York landmark, and they're trying to cover all of the sonnets. They're almost done. I mean, it's quite taken a while, but it's quite. So it was fun because I normally come to film projects by I read something and then I cannot get it out of my head, much though I try, and I like it just sort of I become addicted to it. I keep thinking of a certain image and how that would be on screen, and it sort of goes from there. But this, it wasn't even a sonnet that I knew really. I know I'd read it, but it didn't have any particular associations for me. But among the ones that they had, that was the one I thought there was the most interesting things going on. Among the ones that no one had made a sonnet film of yet. And so it was like all of that analysis and thinking about it came after I was just like, hello, I would like to make a sonnet movie. I did another one. And then they were like, okay. It was the application process was very simple. But then after I'd applied, I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do with the sonnet. And that was that was kind of fun, doing that after I already knew that I was going to make it. And I went through several different phases of interpretation of it before finally, because a lot of people play this particular sonnet as just like very sad. It's sort of it's the speaker saying like, I know that you're going to leave me and you probably should. And most people just play that like, I know you're going to leave me and you should. But I realized, looking at the language and even summarizing it like that, it's also like pretty funny. And that was kind of the fun of it, of like you're joking, but you're also completely not joking and opting response. It's like, I know you're gonna leave me, and you totally should, because I am just no fun, and
Yeah.
so I realized that when I realized it was sort of requesting a response, that's why I had her deliver it another actor, so that you could actually see the other girl's reactions to what she was saying and see her kind of waiting for something at the end. So that was but yeah, each of the steps of figuring out the sonnet helped me figure out what to do with it visually. It was, yeah. And they were great, like 6 months to edit instead of 2 weeks, and they did not, which is what always, they didn't get mad at me, so.
Do they have like any say over how you interpret the sonnet, how you choose to display it? So you're like complete.
Yeah, like I sent a pitch that was what I was planning to do before I made it, but it completely not that. And I sent an email before we filmed it, like, I've changed my mind completely about the sonnet. I'm doing something very different. If you want a new pitch of what I'm actually doing, let me know. And they were like, no, it's fine. Just trust you. So it was amazing. I haven't done a lot of work, within an institution. I feel like this is probably it's probably an unusual situation, but one that I loved. So yeah, they were wonderful. And a lot of the other films on the in the series are just fantastic. So would recommend watching as many as strike your fancy.
Now, you do a lot. You're a director and a writer and a cinematographer. Do all of those elements kind of bleed together when you're working? Like, does your cinematography mind come on when you're directing? And is that beneficial, or does it kind of limit your process a little bit? Or what's that experience like?
Oh, it was such a funny, because like I can't. I mean, it's like they're not even for me separate things that influence each other. It's like one big thing. It's sort of like I was trying to what
It's you as a person. You just are all those.
exactly. Well, I was trying to think of an equivalent, and I've worked some in coffee shops, and I feel like it's very much like operating an espresso machine. Like you're just doing like 8 different things at once, but it's all part of making. It's like you're grinding, just tamping, But so you're sort of you're keeping all these things going at once, and the shot is coming, and you're steaming the milk, and it's sort of like one big thing. You know what's going on, and you're keeping everything working together kind of as seamlessly and efficiently as possible. But it's all or another metaphor for it on a sort of a different way to look at. Oh, I think I froze. Okay,
So
I
you're
think
good.
I'm back. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Another way of looking at it would be that it's like, I like thinking of film as like a language, and each of those parts of it are like part of the grammar of it, you know, like word choice or rhythm, or I should have thought of more things, you know.
It ties in great.
But, you know, like all of the different parts of all the different things that come into saying one thing. I also just really like communicating seamlessly with myself on set. Like if I want to change the shot, I just change the shot. I do a lot. Once I just sort of get in the zone on set, which is so much fun, I just kind of don't really know why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's just like, it has to be this way. And then again, I completely destroy and rebuild everything myself in the edit. So that, which is why it takes 6 months. So it's all one big chaotic thing. However, I do like working with a sound person. That is very nice, because I cannot hold that and also hold a boom pole. I am, you know, it's too. But yeah.
No, yeah, and earlier you talked about lyrics and rhythm, and you've directed a few music videos as well. So I just wanted to know if there was any like different creative process in taking someone else's work, and whether you like kind of collaborate with them on your vision and things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially the music videos that I've done more recently, I've done very much not even just collaborating with them on their vision, but sort of trying to get them to reveal to me what their vision is, and then trying to make it as much as possible, which is really fun and very different. I mean, I don't think of them as my work in the same way. It's kind of more like the cinematography that I do for other people, but it's so much fun to sort of, it's kind of like adapting their music, but also their ideas about their music onto film, and really sort of all of these long meetings trying to figure out exactly this feels right, that feels right, until we sort of I think my role in a lot of those things is both, you know, filming, but also trying to translate what they're saying into film language and into something that can have sort of like a coherent beginning and ending and structure, sort of thematic logic, which is really fun.
Yeah, and you very lovingly and conveniently placed all of your work on your website. So if you want to check out all of the stuff, it'll be on her website, which will be linked. I wanted to ask, how beneficial is it, on top of having social media platforms, how beneficial is it to have your own website as well? And is that something people should look into having?
I mean, I think it's very beneficial, but I'm also very anti social media platforms. This is, as you know, not even my iPhone. Don't have one. I just I've gotten rid of basically everything except for Instagram, which I do think for film is helpful because you can sort of have like a portfolio layout of your work. But I think that a website is just like such a good place to organize all of the information, the way that people can contact you, you know, everything, and be able to keep it consistent, keep it in the same place, keep track of everything, and sort of continually update it. It's like a much more professional and just like more informational way for people to find exactly what they're actually looking for about your work. So yeah, definitely think it's good. I also just get a lot more people that contact me via my website than like DM me on Instagram, and I'm much more likely to see that because I'm not here very often. So
Yeah, great. And like, I guess as a final question, if you had a word of advice for any up and coming filmmakers or anyone looking to start, like begin their start in the film industry, what would that be?
I think I would have like two very contradictory pieces of advice. One of them is to try to write things that would be cheap to film, because that way you can actually start, whether you're doing it yourself or someone else is doing it. But you can make things like with a small number of people, maybe people your age, a location you know you would have access to, whatever, so that you can actually start figuring out what it looks like from getting that off of the page and onto the screen. Even if the first few times it's terrible, you know, you at least you're able to do it without a huge amount of money and just sort of try things out. And then my contradictory piece of advice is that like if you have an idea and you're you come up with it suddenly, and then you think about it and you're like, that's insane. I should absolutely not do that. That's crazy. No one does that. You should absolutely do that. So that's, you know, the more outlandish and interesting your ideas, the better. But if you can write them such that they're cheap to make, that's also very good.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for joining me and giving us all this insight in how to get a career in film. Make sure to tune in to next interview hosted by my fellow BFI Film Academy programmer Natalie Townsend, who will be interviewing filmmaker Ivy Chen regarding their short film Isle of Chairs. If you are a young filmmaker and want to apply for the BFI Future Film Festival, please make sure to submit your short film via Film Freeway. Head to the link in our bio to find out more about that. And if you want to find out about all things BFI Film Academy, make sure to sign up to our newsletter, which we've placed a link to in our bio as well, to make it nice and easy for you. Thank you again, Rebecca, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you so much. See you.